We're all still here. And I just wanted to say that we're moving into our third year in this LCC. We actually started in about 2010. I started in June. I think the first 3 projects were funded in April of 2010. We got some pretty exciting things to look forward to in 2013. We're at a point where we're getting a lot of those early projects finished, and we'll be getting those results here for a number of those really, really soon. And as soon as we start getting those final reports, we'll send those out to everybody. Some pretty interesting results coming out of a lot of these different projects that we've all worked very hard to get funded and get through our system and make sure it's really good science. One of the things you'll be getting from us probably...
talk to Ashley about this, Rick, and probably the week of the 21st
of January. We're putting together an annual report this year. It's actually going to be kind of an annual report that covers our history. We'll have a timeline in there and a few things so that folks that haven't been around as long as some of us have can kind of take a look back. But Ashley Spratt has been helping Mike and I. Ashley's been doing it, putting together the annual report. That'll be a pretty nice compendium of the projects that we funded and where we are, where we're going, our history, important documents that we produced, governance document, charter, those types of things. So we'll send that out to everybody. Steering committee members will get a copy of that as well. And I just wanted to say as we start our third year in this LCC that I want to thank everybody for their persistence, their patience, and their dedication to helping us all make this landscape conservation concept really take hold and work. We're also working with a number of other LCCs on joint projects to try to start tying the network together so that we've got a true network, not just 22 individual LCCs. We're also working on a project with several joint ventures and several other LCCs. It's kind of an interesting new technology, I guess, to look at how to measure landscape changes at fine scale. And as we get more into that through our science applications program, we'll keep you up to speed on that. We've been working with Kevin Doherty, who's also a tech team member, represents the PPJV and several other JVs on this new satellite imagery technology that is going to help us, I think, be able to see landscape changes at really fine scale. So lots of interesting stuff coming up. We're also working very closely with the North Central Climate Science Center. Max has been deeply involved through his project there, and they've just put out a new RFP. I'll tell you that from our perspective, we're pretty pleased with the work with the North Central Climate Science Center. They truly are focusing a lot of their efforts on the fact that LCCs are their primary client, trying to figure out how to best help LCCs deal with issues related specifically to climate change, but get some really good science for us as well. So once again, I'll turn it back to Mike, and we'll get started. But thanks everybody again for being part of this pretty exciting cooperative, and we'll do great things together in 2013.
And I just want to reiterate and mention the annual report again, and turn it over to Ashley for just a second. Ashley, I know you've been in contact with many members, particularly those who are PIs. If you have anything you want to mention relative to the annual report, I think we talked about having a draft out to the tech committee the third week of January. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. Right now, actually over the last month or so, we've been putting together annual reports for actually all of our LCCs in the Midwest region. And the great thing about this is it's really going to provide a snapshot. There's been so many research projects that have been funded. This is really going to kind of put us on the map and kind of show exactly how many projects, how many dollar amounts have gone out, and specifically what types of priorities all of our LCCs are focusing on. So it's going to put a really nice spotlight on all of our LCCs, and not only here locally, but at a national level as well, so that the network can see what the Plains and Prairie Potholes LCC has been working on. I will try to get a draft of that out to everyone on the phone here and the rest of the technical committee by hopefully the 21st of this month. We can allow about a 2-week review period, so if folks have any comments or edits that they'd like to be sure to get in, we can certainly incorporate those, and then we'll officially roll it out at the steering committee meeting in February.
Yep, and the steering committee has asked in the past for materials for their meeting to be in their hands about a week beforehand. So we're hoping to have the review done and anything that needs to be cleaned up on the annual report by the 6th or so of February, and then we'll roll it off onto the full steering committee. So today on this call, I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about where we were at in our 2013 RFP reviewing and ranking process. And then we're going to turn this over to Ann, who's got a presentation that she'll be giving on the Northern Plains Conservation Network, something that she and the folks at World Wildlife have been working on for a couple of years, I believe now. And we got a chance to see some of this about a month back when Rick and I and Max were touring through Montana doing some partner visits. So it's a very exciting enterprise that those folks are involved in, and we thought that it had a lot of applicability to the planning portions of what the LCC is all about. Particularly related to our RFP, as folks remember, the call for proposals closed on December 7th, and then you all should have received from me a series of emails on the 14th of December that included about 4 or 5 proposals per email. And since that day, one of those proposals by Adam, I'm going to butcher his last name, Sepulveda, I think, dealing with interpretation of aquatic invasive species check station results has been pulled from consideration. So there should have been an email from me to the team asking you not to review that one. We got a request from Adam to pull that, and so we've done that. I've also found out recently, and thank you to those who found this little catch, that the Larson proposal did not have a budget attached to it, and I sent that out here in the last hour to folks who are looking for the budget associated with the Larson proposal. There was another question related to, Justin, help me with it, something that you had caught in your review. I think it was the Rebecca Phillips proposal. On the spreadsheet that I sent out, we had another name listed. It was the co-PI, and I don't have that in front of me, unfortunately, right now, but I can find it in a minute. It was the economic conservation of expired CRP in the Prairie Pothole region. On the spreadsheet, that isn't listed as Phillips, it's listed as someone else. And
I'm trying to find it, Mike.
I'm looking for it too. But Dell, or is it Dell? I believe it's listed as the Dell proposal.
Yeah, that's right. That's the one I have.
So that you may see that one as you're doing your review as Phillips, but it's listed in the Excel spreadsheet as the co-PI Dell. I've had a couple of other folks who've asked if we couldn't get together as a technical team on a separate call, perhaps in a week or two from now, and discuss these proposals in some detail and talk about maybe some of the opportunities and or limitations afforded by the proposals. I'd like to do that, and maybe to give folks a chance to participate in that discussion. I'll send out a doodle poll to see when most folks can get together. Steve, you'd asked for that as well. Anything in particular you want to make sure we cover in that?
Well, I guess I don't know how other people felt about it, but I know I reviewed proposals that I didn't have much familiarity with the background on it. It might be good just to kind of discuss and familiarize everybody with what the whys and wherefores of each proposal may be, and make sure we're ranking them correctly.
Justin, do you have any perspective on that? I think I'd heard that more or less that same thing from you as well.
Yeah, and I found myself keeping a lot of notes on these this time around.
in lieu of a discussion like we've had a chance to do in last year. So I would do that.
Well, I'll say again that those notes, I have received already a handful of reviews back, and people have been very good about keeping notes. Those notes are very helpful for me after this process is complete. When I hear from PIs wondering, what the concerns of the tech team were, I can refer to those notes and summarize those notes, and then provide those unsuccessful PIs with a little more perspective on what the committee saw were the limitations of the proposal. So I do appreciate anything that folks submit in that notes column as well. So that is good. I guess my recommendation, given that the deadline for this is the 25th of January, would be that we try to schedule something the end of next week or the 18th, or perhaps maybe the 21st is a holiday, so the 22nd would be the latest I think we should discuss these if folks are going to review and rank them after that. So the options might be the 10th, 11th, 18th, or 22nd that I would provide in a doodle poll to folks and see if we can't get a quorum of people together on a call for maybe an hour or so to talk about these in detail. Any other thoughts or insights on that idea? Road forward.
One more thing about the proposals. It was obvious to me, but maybe not to others. At least I think I got this right. That the proposal labeled as SCAR on the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Don, I don't think is actually listed on the proposal. That's the one that comes from Tom McMahon and Chris Guy.
Thank you. Yep, that was, I believe, is that the smallmouth bass in the Yellowstone River? Yeah. Thanks, Justin, for that. The goal, again, as we mentioned earlier, is to have our review and ranking done, and we'll submit to the steering committee. I'm hoping for by the 6th of February, our list of recommendations with any caveats associated with that list for their consideration. Rick, I believe they've committed now to the morning of the 13th.
Correct.
Is there a location on that yet?
We're probably going to either meet here or at Game and Fish. I don't know yet.
Okay. And there'll be a conference line available for those who can't be in Bismarck, but they did choose the 13th of February, so it's the morning of the start of the Wildlife Society meeting here in town. And then, as in years past, the recommendations or the discussion and consideration by the steering committee would hopefully result in selection of our successful proposals for the year. And maybe one last thing to remind folks of is this idea that we do have these 6 ongoing projects from 2011 and 2012, which we have committed to funding in 2013. That you see on the screen now, the Cleveland, Gresswell, Gleason, Gallagher, Johnson, and Vicki Dreitz from last year, that will all go forward and receive funding for the rest of their year, in some cases 2 years. Any questions about the 2013 process and where we go forward? Okay, with that, I guess I'm going to see if I can't figure out how to do this, Ann. I'm going to
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
I did have a question now that you mentioned it. On some of these are multi-year. If we like them, we're approving them for the multi-year. Is that correct?
That was the decision that we made that recommendation to the steering committee about a year ago, and they endorsed that commitment. So that if we fund a proposal, we're funding it for the entire length of that research, including the tail. Okay.
Well, the reason I'm asking, a few of them said, well, this is the first year of a multi-year project, but they only give a budget for the first year. And I'm wondering if they're just anticipating getting funding from some other source, if they're saying that.
That's a good catch, Jeff. I haven't seen that. I guess I didn't notice that when I was looking.
Well, I think part of the issue, too, is that the RFP specifically said that work that could be done in 1 year was what we were looking for.
Oh, and that has been our emphasis, but... So, if we select one that says it's the first year of a multi-year proposal, we'll have to get back with those PIs and find out what the full context of that commitment would be prior to making any sort of recommendation to the steering committee.
You know,
Okay.
folks, those of you who've been around a while know we've gone around the horn on this a few different times with the steering committee, and this is where we are right now. I would tell you that you do have the option in terms of recommending something to the steering committee to decide to recommend that perhaps we select one project and we fully fund it with this year's funding and not pick 2 or 3 and go out, multiple years. That is an option you have in terms of your recommendations.
Say, Ann, on that, on your computer now, you should click on the Share My Desktop. Should be right in the middle of your computer screen.
Okay.
Well, while Anna's doing that, just to follow up again with that last question, we can also contact the PIs and ask them the question. If they're asking for multiple year funding, what are they going to be requesting, so we could get a better idea. If you'd like Mike and I to do that, we certainly can follow up.
Yeah, I'm just getting into this myself. This is Jeff again, and I just noticed one that sounded like it was the first phase one, but they didn't ask for funds in the follow-up years, so I just assumed they weren't asking for it from this group.
We can find that out, though, Jeff. That's a good question, because they may or may not be, and we don't get caught either way, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
And I can see your slides, and I'm not sure if you've used this system before. Just a little heads up for you as you advance them. There's about a 3 to 4 second delay from when you advance a slide to when everyone can see them. But you're good to go, so take it away.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to be talking about a project that we've been working on for about 9 months now, I guess. It's an interactive online web map. And so I'll just go ahead and get started here. So I just wanted to start by sort of showing you where our focal area is. We're in the northern Great Plains, so sort of the western portion of, the LCC ecoregion, covering about 5 U.S. states, 2 Canadian provinces. We are mostly a terrestrial program. We don't spend a lot of time focusing on freshwater resources, although that may change in the next few years. And of course, the ecoregion tends to be mostly privately owned. A little bit of state land, some federal land, and a little bit of tribal land. But it's kind of an interesting, unique place to be working for sure. So about 10 years ago, WWF, along with some other groups, started an organization called the Northern Plains Conservation Network. And there are 20 plus or minus organizations and a few individuals who are a part of this network. We really run the gamut from very small local organizations like the Badlands Conservation Alliance, which just has a couple folks working for them, up to the international organizations like WWF, Wildlife Conservation Society, NWF, some of those sorts of groups. So it's a pretty interesting mix of folks. And the last time we put out a conservation assessment was in 2004, and that was mostly using data from the late 90s and early 2000s. And as most of you, particularly the ones who work in spatial analysis, know, things have changed quite a bit in the past decade. So we thought that it would be appropriate at this point to go back and sort of revisit our conservation assessment using, some more updated spatial data. And in the process of doing that, we decided to kind of get away from the 300-page printed report that sits on people's shelves and try a little bit different method of sharing information. So we do have a shorter written report that talks a little bit about the resources in the ecoregion and the threats to the ecoregion, but we made a significant effort to create an interactive web map. And the reason we did this is because it is much easier to update, so we thought that it would be more of a living tool for people to use instead of being outdated as soon as we got it printed. We were also able to put in some really simple GIS functionality for some of the groups that are smaller and maybe don't have GIS capacity within their own organization. And when we were putting this together, we really tried to emphasize ecoregional data sets as much as possible, but for the most part, we kept the U.S. and Canadian data separate because lots of times they are using different underlying layers like geology and those sorts of things. So you'll see, like wind potential for Canada and wind potential for the U.S. As two separate data layers. So at this point, although this changes on a daily basis, we have about 150 data sets that are currently up online. We have a lot of species data. We have mammals, plants, birds, invertebrates, and fish. We also have amphibian and reptile data, but we don't have permission to share that at this point. So that's just within the sort of WWF files right now. We also have quite a bit of information on threats. This is a place that we will be sharing some of the results from Ben Rashford's project that we'll be finishing up this year, later this year, whenever he feels comfortable sharing those with a larger audience. We have some demographic data, census data, some geographic data, some climate change layers, and then some results from some of the projects that we've undertaken, either just ourselves or with some partners, some more specific research questions that we've had. So I just wanted to zip through some of the different functions, so I'll try to press this before I start talking about each one so you guys don't have the delay. But so I just used some screen captures here to kind of show you what the system looks like. There's a legend that pops up here on the upper right as you add layers. For instance, this is a black-tailed prairie dog layer that we've actually put together. As many of you know, I think prairie dogs are a big focus for our programs. So we've spent quite a bit of time trying to sort of standardize distribution layer across the different states that we work in. We also have a custom zoom button, so that's in addition to the sort of classic Google Maps zoom, so you can really get into depth in one specific place within the ecoregion. We also have, this gets a little bit more into the GIS functionality, some transparency controls that pop up, so you're able to sort of move these bars from left to right to help you display the data in different ways. You can also reorganize the layers, so very similar to the way that you do in ArcGIS, just clicking on these layers and dragging them to reorganize them. You're able to search for a specific location. Here I have up the data set that looks at where there's good wind resource potential, but also low impact to biodiversity, which is a project that we did with TNC, and how that relates to a specific location within our ecoregion. And then you can also retrieve data. So this is a point query, as opposed to being able to sort of ask how much, how big of an area is within a polygon or something like that. You can really just do it for a point. This looks at national park visitation for the very small national parks that we have within our ecoregion. Some potential uses, I want to just show you a few overlays that we've used in different presentations, and then just sort of let you guys have some time to look at it on your own, and then get back to me with any sorts of comments and suggestions you may have. But for instance, we've spent quite a bit of time since we created this tool looking at how the threats data sort of overlays with different land ownership types, what those spatial patterns sort of look like across the ecoregion. It's kind of an interesting tool as you hear about new projects, new wind farms going in, or oil and gas development, looking at how that may overlay with some of the biodiversity layers. One thing that's been of particular interest within the NPCN is looking at sort of similarities and differences among how different organizations classify their priority areas. And then in the future, one thing we've been talking about as we add more layers to this tool is to have a layer where we show, where all of the partner organizations are working and what they're working on. But of course, that's pretty hard to keep updated, so we're kind of trying to figure out from the beginning the best way to go about creating that layer. But I think that will be an important addition eventually. So for instance, here's a screen capture of land ownership within the U.S. portion of the ecoregion overlaid with an oil and gas development potential layer that was created by the Nature Conservancy in Wyoming. She also, Holly Copeland is the one who authored that study from a couple of years ago, and she just completed for us the same analysis but on the Canadian side of the ecoregion. So we're trying to get, pretend like that border isn't there as much as possible, which has been a little bit tough during this process. Here's a shot of overlapping priorities. I just put a couple up here, but TNC portfolio sites obviously are very well-known priority areas, but we overlaid those with the CEC grassland priority areas, which are in brown, and then the state priority areas for Montana and Wyoming, which are in the light green, and those are also combined with some Fish and Wildlife Service priorities for the Dakotas. So you can kind of start to see where all the overlap occurs among the state and federal agencies and the NGOs who work in the region. This next map is an example of a new wind farm that's currently going in. This is towards the western edge of our ecoregion. You can see Helena there to the left. And so this is overlaid on wind potential within the U.S. So these orange and red areas are very high wind potential. And then I also have up in the dark blue these low impact areas for siting of wind farms. So you can kind of see how all of those things sort of play in together. This is a project that we did a couple of years ago when I first started with WWF, looking at the occurrence of West Nile virus under different climate change scenarios. So we just did this for Montana and Wyoming, but this is out to 2030 during August. So looking at where West Nile is likely to be present based on some temperature thresholds. So those places in red. And then I've overlaid the sage-grouse core areas and the fuzz locations of sage-grouse black. So anything that's sort of sensitive as far as actual spatial locations, we fuzzed all of that data so that there's no worry of folks actually finding those blacks. But it kind of gives you an interesting picture of how those sage-grouse may be affected in the future. So that's about all. I welcome any comments. The web address is npcn.net. There's a pretty obvious link in the upper right-hand portion of the website to get to the interactive web map. Obviously, comments and suggestions can come to me or GIS analyst Sarah Olam. You can get her email from clicking on the little panda logo on the map. So I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Yeah, this is Steve. I guess first off, I'd just like to say nice job. I look forward to working with you on our bike habitat assessment to help bolster both our models of what's going on. But I guess one question I had, and more curiosity, is given the fact that you had the 2004, you guys look at any changes that happened from 2004 to now?
So we have, but it's been mostly as far as threats go. So our last conservation assessment was pretty interesting. It was what they called opportunity-based. So they didn't spend a lot of time looking at things like climate change, oil and gas development, wind energy development. So the written portion of our assessment this time around has been really focused on, the trends in those different threats to the ecoregion. And then the way that we did the way that we created our biodiversity layer, which is also online, is a little bit different this time around. They did an expert-based ranking last time, and this time we tried to do it in a way that sort of took away that expert-based opinion piece of it, just because there's so many organizations, and it was a little bit, got a little bit out of hand. There's so many opinions to take into consideration. So it's changed a little bit where our focus is, in that it brought in more of western South Dakota that had been sort of dropped out last time around. And when you talk to folks who were invested in the process last time, they said that a lot of that had to do with sort of high population densities on some of the tribal areas. And we didn't feel like that should sort of dictate where you focus your priority areas this time around, and instead sort of take that into account when you're looking at different strategies. So it has changed it, in a couple pretty significant ways. But.
And this is Mike. In some of your original pictures on your slides, you could definitely see where those state boundaries were. Is that a function of the databases used? Were they state-oriented?
It kind of depends on the data set. And I actually am now just realizing that I forgot to say that each data layer, there's a button to click where you can get the actual data source, so the citation for a paper, or information on each of the data sets that we use to kind of aggregate it together on the map. But yeah, it really depends on the data set. Some of them have some pretty hard state boundaries, and then others don't. So we did our best not to have, to get rid of those boundaries as much as possible.
Other questions for Ann? Where do you see this going, Ann? Are there other areas where maybe other offices of World Wildlife or other partners are looking to the east or south or west to expand this?
We've talked about expanding it in all sorts of different ways. Some folks, are more interested in having a few more GIS functions, so actually being able to query polygons and clip things out and that sort of thing. Other folks are interested in, expanding more to the east, or particularly to the west, getting into the Blackfoot Reservation. So there are lots of ideas out there, and I'd love to hear what all of you guys think as well, because it's a project we'd like to really keep as up to date as possible, and continue to sort of push the boundary and make it something really useful for the groups who are part of the network and others.
So, Ann, you've been a big part of this project with Ben Rashford as well, about looking at the land use scenarios and sensitive habitats and risk of conversion. How do you see a data set like that being integrated into this?
Well, we are certainly planning to post it whenever he's ready to do so. We've actually been using some of his preliminary results and looking at how risk varies across land ownership type. Obviously, we have some folks who work more closely with federal agencies, state agencies, and then private landowners. So we're trying to use that to sort of focus, particularly our work with private landowners. And so, we've been doing that just over the past, couple of months. So we're sort of at the initial stages of using some of his newest models to kind of target some work towards private landowners, particularly in the eastern portion. the ecoregion where we work.
Other questions for Ann? I don't want to steal all the time. Did you have a layer related to insects in there?
Oh, we do have some invertebrate data, yeah. I think we have 3 or 4 species.
Butterflies, are they in there?
I think there is one butterfly.
Okay.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
They're getting more and more attention across the Dakotas these days.
Really? Yeah, we tend to be so kind of Montana, Wyoming focused, but it'll be good to get some folks who are a little bit more in tune with the Dakotas looking at the map and telling us what we missed.
So basically, just to reiterate, any thoughts or suggestions, you can send them to Ann. I think that anybody who wants to look at this, and you've got the website up there now, that'll pull up the interactive link. Is that correct, then?
The link is, up on the sort of upper right-hand corner of that website. Yeah, it should be pretty easy to find.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate you taking some time and walking us through the work that you're doing, and certainly does have a landscape perspective that could help the entire partnership. Certainly those folks working west and south of the Missouri River.
Yeah.
Thanks again. Are there any last-minute comments or thoughts before we wrap it up? Watch for a doodle poll request from me here in the next day, and I think we'll look at the 10th, 11th, 18th, and 22nd as possible dates to have a discussion with those who want to talk about the pros and cons of the various proposals. One last thing I'll mention to folks I forgot to mention earlier, as in years past, if you perceive a conflict of interest as you're reviewing a proposal that you're closely wedded to the proposal, please recuse yourself from reviewing that. I think that's one way that we can add a little credibility to our process, and I certainly appreciate you doing that. So with that, watch for the doodle poll. If not, we will reconvene on the 6th of February with our monthly calls, and on that call we'll go over the final review and ranking and anything we need to do to prepare for the upcoming steering committee meeting. So thanks again, folks, and I'm looking forward to 2013 watch as well for an email from Ashley with the link to this webinar and the upcoming annual report draft that'll be out here the 3rd week of January. Thanks, Ashley, for all your time and coordination getting with our PIs to pull that together as well. All right, folks, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.